If you wanted to understand a woman named Odessa's whole life, you wouldn't need her diary. You just need to know what was playing every single time her people gathered. There was the song playing at her wedding reception in 1962, when she was 22 and certain about exactly one thing. There were the songs blasting out of a window onto Calumet Avenue every summer when the block itself became the party. There were the reunions every August, cousins arriving from 3 states pretending they hadn't gained weight since last year. There were her own Friday night house parties once her children were grown and the apartment was finally hers to fill however she wanted. And in her last years, there was the quieter work, standing in a church kitchen, feeding a grieving family before they even had to ask. 5 different rooms, 5 different reasons to gather, one woman who moved through all of them. These are 10 of the songs that followed her the whole way. A wedding reception does not sound like a block party. A family reunion does not sound like a repass. And yet somehow, all 4 of them, along with the house party that came later, were carried by the same 10 years of records. Song number 4 turned an entire street into a dance floor without anybody needing a permit. Song number 7 made grown men cry at a reunion table, and nobody was embarrassed about it. And the 2 that closed this list were never really about a party at all. By the time we get there, you'll understand exactly what they were about instead. Act 1, The Block Party. Song number 1, Dancing in the Street by Martha and the Vandellas, 1964. Before it was anything else, this was a block party song built for exactly this. It climbed to number 2 on the pop chart in the fall of '64, kept out of the top spot only by Manfred Mann. Marvin Gaye helped write it and played drums on the session, but it was Martha Reeves who reshaped it into an invitation instead of a love song. She said she pictured Mardi Gras, not a bedroom. On a summer night on Calumet Avenue, somebody's radio in an open window was doing exactly what the song promised, calling the whole block outside. Song number 2, Cool Jerk by the Capitals, 1966. This one came out of Detroit in 1966 and climbed to number 7 on the pop chart and number 2 on the R&B chart, built around a dance that started a little too rough for radio until the group cleaned up its name and kept the move. On a block with the whole street as the floor, this was the record that turned a sidewalk into a competition. The Capitals never had another hit after this one. On Calumet Avenue, one song was more than enough to be remembered. The block party was loud and public. What came next was smaller, and it asked everybody to slow all the way down. Act 2, The Wedding Reception. Song number 3, Betcha by Golly, Wow, by the Stylistics, 1972. Written by the Philadelphia team of Tom Bell and Linda Creed, this one climbed to number 3 on the pop chart and reached the very top of the R&B chart in 1972. Russell Tompkins Jr.'s falsetto was delicate enough to make an entire room go quiet at once. At a reception, this was frequently the song a couple chose for their first dance, or the one that got requested for them by somebody in the crowd who knew exactly what it meant to them. Song number 4, Ooh, Baby, Baby by the Miracles, 1965. Smokey Robinson wrote this one, and you can hear exactly why he was already being called one of the great songwriters of his generation before he turned 30. It's smaller and quieter than most records on this list, which is exactly why it worked at a reception. The kind of song that let an older couple, married 30 years, sneak back onto the floor for one more dance while everyone else was distracted by the cake. But not every gathering on this list started with an invitation. Before we get to the house party, there's something you need to know about the radio dial that connected all of them. Whether it was a wedding, a block party, or a Tuesday afternoon, there was a good chance the radio in that room was tuned to WVON. It went on the air on April 1st, 1963, after 2 brothers named Leonard and Phil Chess, the same Chess who ran Chess Records, the label that gave the world Chicago blues, bought a small station and turned it into something built entirely for Black Chicago. They called it the Voice of the Negro. The DJs who built that station's reputation called themselves the Good Guys. Herb Kent, E. Rodney Jones, Purvis Spann, a young DJ named Don Cornelius, who would later go on to create Soul Train. Berry Gordy at Motown trusted this one Chicago station so much that he sent every record his label produced to WVON before he sent it anywhere else in the country. And it wasn't just music. When Dr. King was assassinated in 1968 and cities across the country erupted, it was WVON's DJs who got on the air and out into the streets to try to hold their community together. Every occasion on this list, the happy ones and the hard ones, happened within earshot of that same station. Now, from a wedding to a house party, because once the reception ended, the real celebration was just getting started somewhere else. Act 3, The House Party. Song number 5, It's Your Thing, by the Isley Brothers, 1969. The Isley Brothers had already been recording for over a decade by 1969, but this was the one that finally won them a Grammy. It reached number 2 on the pop chart and number 1 on the R&B chart, arriving right after the brothers broke away from a bigger label to start their own. The lyrics were as much a business statement as a dance record, a declaration that what they did with their own talent was nobody's business but theirs. At a house party, it just meant the living room furniture had been pushed against the wall for a reason. Song number 6, Express Yourself, by Charles Wright and the Watts 103rd Street Rhythm Band, 1970. Charles Wright wasn't even performing this song when it was born. He shouted, "Express yourself" to a crowd during a completely different number, and the response was so loud he built an entire song around the phrase. It peaked at number 12 on the pop chart and number 3 on the R&B chart in 1970. 18 years later, a group called NWA sampled it without asking first. Wright called the label, and the mix-up worked out fine in the end. The rapper who'd used it turned out to be his own nephew. From a party built for friends to a table built for family, because a reunion asks something different of a song than a party does. Act 4, The Family Reunion. Song number 7, Everyday People, by Sly and the Family Stone, 1968. Sly and the Family Stone were unusual before anyone even heard a note. Black and white, men and women, all sharing lead vocals in one band, at a time when that alone was a statement. Everyday People hit number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts in early 1969. Different strokes for different folks became one of the most repeated phrases in American music. And at a reunion, full of cousins who agreed on almost nothing else, it was the one song that got everybody, the church-going aunt and the wild younger cousin alike, onto the same patch of grass at the same time. Song number 8, Love Train, by the O'Jays, 1972. Written by the legendary Philadelphia team of Gamble and Huff, this one went all the way to number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts. It's a song that names entire countries, Russia, China, England, Africa, and asks all of them to get on the same train. At a family reunion, where half the guests had driven or flown in from 3 or 4 different states just to be in the same yard for one afternoon, the ambition of that message never felt too big for the occasion. If anything, it felt exactly right. But not every gathering on this list came with barbecue and a boombox. The last 2 songs belong to a different kind of table. Act 5, The Repass. Song number 9, If You Don't Know Me By Now, by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, 1972. This one hit number 1 on the R&B chart and climbed to number 3 on the pop chart, carried by a young lead singer named Teddy Pendergrass, whose voice on this record made it clear he wasn't going to stay a backup singer much longer. Written by Gamble and Huff, it became one of the most covered songs in soul music history. At a repass, in a kitchen full of women who had cooked since before dawn, this was the record somebody's radio played low in the background, not for dancing, just for something familiar to fill the silence between conversations. Song number 10, Family Affair, by Sly and the Family Stone, 1971. There's a reason this one closes the list, and it isn't only because it was the biggest hit, even though it was number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts in 1971. It's the title. Every occasion on this list, the wedding, the block party, the house party, the reunion, and now this, was a family affair whether the people in the room were related by blood or not. The neighbor who brought a plate to a repast for a family she barely knew. The block that threw a party for no reason at all except that it was summer. Sly Stone wasn't only describing his own band when he wrote this song. By the end of this list, it's clear he was describing every room we've walked through. Odessa's apartment on Calumet Avenue isn't there anymore. Neither is the church that hosted those repasses, not in the same building anyway. But the range of her life, the wedding, the block parties, the reunions, the house parties, and eventually the quiet work of feeding other families through their hardest weeks. All of it had a soundtrack, and none of us made it up. It was already there, playing the whole time. Call somebody in your family this week and ask what was playing at their wedding, their block, their reunion table. Ask what played at the repast. Nobody wanted to plan, but everybody showed up for anyway. Write it down, because these songs live in people before they live anywhere else, and people don't last forever. Drop the song your family couldn't get through a wedding, a reunion, or a repast without in the comments, because these were never just songs for one kind of day. They were how a family showed up for every kind of day there was.